This neuroscientist has gained over 1.6 million followers on Instagram, and in all likelihood, her content has made her a millionaire. But I spent the last 197 hours of my life studying her entire business from top to bottom. I've been to her workshops, I've read all of her emails, and I've gone as far back as 2 years ago on Instagram and watched most of her reels. And I realized that as good as she's doing right now, she could be doing even better. So what I want to do in this video is break down exactly how Em on the Brain is running a multi-million-dollar per year business from Instagram, give her one really simple strategy that she can implement in less than 30 minutes to double her conversion rate. But more important than any of that is I want to show you exactly how you can do this for your business, no matter how many followers you have. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go to the whiteboard. First, we got to go through some research. And after all this research that I've done, I basically boiled her entire process down to 3 steps, with the end goal being selling people into her course/community called Manychat. We'll get into this a little bit later, but for now, I'm going to show you real quick like how she's driving people to this $2,997 course/community. So there's 3 steps to this, right? What I want you to realize with step number 1 is that she's actually not doing any selling for this program on her social media account, which is crazy. She has 1.6 million followers. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that with step number 1, with Instagram and primarily through Reels and Stories, so I'll write Reels plus Stories, R plus S. So with Reels, I typed this out right here just so we can see this. What she's doing with her content is actually making people aware of this problem. And then through her content, she's telling them that there is a solution to the problem. So the way that it basically works is like this little funnel, I guess you could call it, through social media content, right? So the reels that she makes, this is where the majority of her audience finds her. From the audience that she generates from the reels, she is then using stories to quote unquote sell into her webinar. Now, she's not charging for the webinar, she's just capping it at 5,000 spots, but we'll get into the numbers in a little bit. She is generating interest and attention through Reels and then converting people to the next step through her Instagram stories. Again, I want you to know that she's not selling anything on Instagram. There is literally no selling happening on Instagram, but she's still making millions of dollars. Step number 2 is she is driving people to a twice monthly webinar where it's basically 2 hours, and she talks about manifestation and reprogramming your brain and reaching new goals and fixing your relationships and your confidence and things like that. And this is 2 hours. So she is also kind of similar to what she's doing with her reels. She is showing people that there is a problem, but now this is where she introduces the selling. So selling them the solution to the problem that she is spending basically 90 minutes explaining. And also everybody on this webinar at this point has been aware that they have a problem, which is why they're on the webinar in the first place, through the reels and all of her content. That's step number 2. Step number 3, let's zoom out a little bit. And if this seems very simple, it's because it is. From Webinar Jam, which is where she's hosting her webinars, she's using email marketing on Kit. This, I've never been happier. Because what I'm going to show you at the end of this video, when we go through the tutorial on how you can actually do what she's doing for yourself, no matter how many followers you have, what we can do to make this entire process better is amplified with what you can do in Kit. It's crazy. If this person goes to the webinar and they don't buy, I'm assuming that she knows that that person did not buy, so then they are probably tagged in Kit as a non-purchaser or somebody who attended the webinar and did not purchase. Why is that important? Well, after this person attends the webinar, there's a few emails that go out. So number 1, there's a recording. And she's probably assuming that, she probably has like a 40% attendance rate on the webinar from 5,000 people. It's 2,000 people. We'll get into that in a second. But she's hoping that people watch the recording because she's also pitching Manychat in the email. It's not a crazy pitch. It's basically like, oh, by the way, you will probably hear about Manychat. It does X, Y, and Z. It's this course and community, and you'll hear more about that in the recording. We can make that a lot better, not with copywriting, but with a simple, very simple data strategy. Again, I'm going to get into that and show you exactly how it's done. So in the emails through Kit, she is selling the solution to the problem, or for the people who didn't buy, she is sending them back through this entire sequence, right? So I didn't purchase this thing, but she knows that I showed up to a workshop, probably. So if I didn't purchase, she's assuming that I need more nurture. So she's now promoting more workshops, future workshops, to the people who did not purchase. AKA, you continue to see her content on Instagram, and then you go back to the second webinar, and maybe she, changes up the webinar a little bit. She has higher conversion rates by changing the content, so on and so forth. The end goal is to convert you into a $2,997 purchaser of the course in the community. That's it. What do I know about this funnel? In terms of numbers, not much, but I do have clients similar to what she does, and I basically took the averages of what they were doing before working with me, and I plugged it into her stats. So she's got 1.6 million followers on Instagram, which is crazy. Based off of what I know about story views, around like 10 to 15% of your audience will see your story. If you're better with stories, you're going to have more than that. But she's getting between 100,000 and 300,000 views in the high end for her Instagram stories. Now, this is important to know. Why is this important to know? Because she, on her Instagram stories, she's just sending people the link to Webinar Jam. And from that link to the webinar, she's collecting name, email, and phone number, which is great. If you get 5,000 phone numbers, assuming they're all legit, that does two really important things for you. Number one, it increases the likelihood that somebody's going to show up to that webinar because you can now text them and remind them instead of email and remind them. Number two, gets a little bit tricky with SMS if you're doing marketing, but now she at least has another opportunity to follow up with the people who did not buy from that webinar, likely. So she has 5,000 people registered for that webinar as a cap. That might have to do with like the Webinar Jam subscription. I have no idea. But if we assume that she's going to get around 40% of people who registered to show up, that's pretty good, 40%. This is where I'm not super sure. But if I had to guess based off of the price of the products, a lot of people in her audience are at different stages of trust and buying from her and things like that. And of course, the price factors into this. But if we assume a 1% to 2.5% conversion rate, which we see right here, there's a good chance she's making anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 per webinar. Now you might see this number right here and you're probably like, well, she's making the average US salary or twice the US salary in basically 2 hours. How does this get any better than it is? Well, it comes down to data. So what I did, and these are not like things that I've typed out, so we don't, you see a lot of words here, but don't worry about these words. What I want to basically show you is the power of data and segmentation for your audience. So the problem that I see with a lot of creators right now is they convert at 1 to 2%. And if you just Google in what is the average e-commerce website conversion rate, you're going to see the average is 1 to 2%. So when somebody goes to Google and they're like, well, my conversion rate's 1 to 2% and the average is 1 to 2%, I'm probably doing a good job. So they keep just posting content. It's basically just a game of volume at that point. Now, what people don't realize is kind of two things here. Number one, yes, you have a lot of followers and your products sell really well right now, but at some point the audience will have fatigue with that offer. So it's your responsibility now to increase the amount of conversions for the current offer as quickly as you possibly can. And I really believe that has to do with data. Data is the most important part of your marketing. It truly is. So what do I mean by this? Well, when I talk about making something like this even better, again, you see this number and you're like, I see this number and I'm like, holy shit. So how do we make this better? Well, I went to her website for Minecraft. So this course/community right here. And I saw that there were 3 different kind of objectives for this same course. So number one is kind of the intro to manifestation and neuroscience and things like that. Number two says hacking the system and just kind of understanding who you are, setting goals that activate the brain, identifying who you are, choosing your archetype. This is more 201, and then this is 301. So it goes kind of this really simple beginner, intermediate, and expert. So I'm assuming the course is positioned to take you from wherever you're at to now being an expert and able to kind of reprogram your brain to have, better relationships with your family, your friends, your spouse, yourself. This is really important because when you have something like this, and this is why I love the higher ticket cohorts and communities, because they don't just solve one very narrow specific problem. You can argue that they do because people might have specific problems and they just go into the course and then they kind of do their thing, they bounce around. But what you're able to do with a curriculum as kind of granular as this is segment the audience and now pitch the same thing 15 different ways. And we do that by using data. So how do we make this better? What I'm going to do is show you, based off of my research, one very specific question we can ask the audience when they register for the webinar or when they register for something like a lead magnet. She doesn't have any lead magnets right now besides the webinar. It's totally fine. But if we can just ask the audience this one question, I'll get to this in a second, we're able to segment the audience, store that data in something like Instagram and Kit, which she's using right now. It's her entire business. And then kind of develop this like private marketing world slash algorithm for the audience to say, cool, you told me this about you. Now I know that about you, and everything that I'm going to do for you in the future is based off of what you've already told me. So that question that I want to ask this audience, and what I'm going to show you exactly how to do, by the way, I'm going to show you exactly how to do this for your audience, no matter how many followers you have. The question that I came up with based off of everything that I know about her course is, what do you feel is your biggest gap right now? Understanding how manifestation works, shifting your identity and habits, or taking consistent action to make it real, right? So if we talk about like this one question in particular, so if we just go like, shifting your identity, shifting your habits, or actually taking action to make it real. So the last part of this question here is like more for accountability. But I would also argue that like shifting your identity would be here, right? Like intermediate. Habits and understanding of the product or of manifestation could be there. Or this one could be like the expert level accountability. There's a lot of lines on this screen, don't worry. I'm gonna break it all down for you. I'm actually gonna erase this so you're not confused. So the importance of that question is it allows us to now segment the audience based off of what they tell us. And I would argue it's probably just this. What do you feel like is your biggest gap right now when it comes to manifestation? Is what is going to take our conversion rate from 1.5 to 2% to 4 to 5%? Here's how. I've done this for clients in the past, where we basically collect name and email, and then we just ask this open-ended question. So the open-ended question here is, when it comes to manifestation, what do you think your biggest problem or gap is? Very simple. And people can just fucking respond to the question. Now, we're doing that all in the DMs, and we're doing that through a program called Manychat. I'm going to show you again. I promise I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. And then we're going to send that information over to Kit. And then we're also obviously going to include the people who show up for the webinar and Webinar Gem. So we have 3 things. Now, with my clients right now, we can expect around 70% of somebody, or people of somebody, 70% of somebody's body, 70% of people in our audience who triggered this automation within Manychat will give us an accurate name and an accurate email. How many of those people will actually tell us what their biggest gap is? Well, after running this hundreds of thousands of times, the number is between 35 and 40%. This is fucking absurd. If you have, and that's 35% of that 70%, by the way. So if you have 1,000 people who go through a Manychat automation, let's just do some math real quick. Let's see how good I am at mental math. So 1,000 people, 700 of them give you their email. 40% of 700 is 280. We can expect about 280 people out of this 1,000 to basically tell us their life story. Now, what are we doing with that information? Where does that actually live? Well, you can keep it in Manychat, which is cool, and then you can segment your audience based off of what they say, and then you can send custom messages based off of that information. But what I would argue you can do is actually take that information from Manychat and send it over to Kit, which is what we do. Now, why is that important? Well, when I mentioned that she has this 3-step process of sending the email sequence after she runs this webinar, we can now, I'm getting real low here, we can basically customize the follow-up message for every person who goes to that webinar but does not buy. We can customize the message based off of what they've told us in Instagram, and then position Minecraft based off of that information. So let's go through some numbers, and then I'll show you how to do it. Again, this is all theoretical. because I don't really know what her actual numbers are. Why the fuck would she share them with me? It makes no sense. But this is based off of what I have done myself and what I've done with clients at high ticket prices. So I've sold cohorts in the past that were $2,000. I think 20 was it 2,500, 2,000. I think it was 2,500. I forget. And then I've obviously helped clients, run webinars to then sell into high ticket products, and we convert using this method, by the way, around 4%. But what's also crazy is that not only does it increase conversion rate, but it increases the likelihood of somebody showing up because we're using that data, number one, to send them customized emails that will position the workshop as something that will actually help them based off of what they told us. And number two, we can use follow-up emails using that same data. So quick numbers right here. I'll erase this so we're not confused. Lots of lines here. But same thing, right? 100,000 views to 300,000 views on her story. 5,000 people register for the webinar, but now we have a 40 to 50% attendance rate, which is good. So now we have more at-bats. At-bats, that's a plus sign, by the way. Holy smokes, I'm a disaster tonight. So 40 to 50% attendance rate. But now, based off of this, two things I mentioned, right? So we're using that data to then position the workshop as something that this person will really benefit from, using the data that they've already told us. But now, a lot of this is coming, yes, from the workshop, because with the data that they've given us and us using it, we've increased the trust before they even show up to the workshop. Yes, I hear you, I'm listening to you, and this is going to really help you out. Something like that. But a lot of these purchases now actually come post workshop. Why is that? Well, when you have 2,000, 2,500 people on a webinar, you can't just be like, oh, Stacy, you told me that you have this problem. I would love for you to be here because you've got so many people on there. But your conversion rate will be the same on the webinar. So I'm assuming that the majority of people who are currently purchasing this course, this 20 to 30, in theory again, are purchasing while on the workshop. I'm sure she's got some urgency play there, but we can actually, we're close to doubling the conversion rate, all because of the data that we're sending and utilizing post-workshop. So if I told Emily that I'm trying to develop more confidence and, make advancements in my career just through reprogramming my brain, if she's able to send me customized emails after I go to the workshop but don't buy, based off of what she knows about me, of course I'm more likely to buy it. So that's what I want to do here. That's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do. So 80 to 100 purchases at 4%. Pretend that zero's not there. But now we've got something like 250,000 to 300,000. Which is crazy. Again, based off of numbers that I use with myself and my clients, all because of this strategy of collecting data here and sending it here and knowing what we know about people who show up or don't show up and customizing the follow-up using her email service provider. So now that you know how that works, why don't we break down exactly how to do just that? All right, we're back and we are in Manychat. And before you go nuts and you're like, oh my God, there's so many boxes and rectangles and lines and colors and shit like that, I'm going to give you this exact template, and we're also going to break down exactly how to use it right now. So if we go back to what I just talked about, I'm talking about using data to send customized follow-ups to people based off of whether or not they showed up to the webinar or not, but also to help them get on the webinar in the first place. So I mentioned that Emily is also collecting name, email, and phone number within her registration for the webinar, and she can also do that through Manychat. So what I'm doing right here, what you see on your screen right now, is just that. It's not the final version, but it's pretty damn close. So the only thing that you don't see is follow-up messages if people don't respond, but we are collecting first name, email, phone. We're adding them to a sequence in kits. We can also do that here. I'll make some adjustments as I go through this, but we're ultimately asking that follow-up question to then gather more information from our audience. And what we're able to do is actually connect Manychat to ChatGPT, analyze the data that somebody has given us through that free text input, which you see right here. And then we're grouping them into one of 5 buckets. So we're going to do that based off of confidence, career, relationship, stress, and one other one I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll show you in a second. So let's walk through this entire ManyChat setup to start. And if you are, listen, if you're not familiar with like the technical side of ManyChat, don't worry. Again, you will get this template. But basically, what we're doing is we are collecting first name, email, and phone number. That's exactly what's happening right here. So you'll notice conditions above each of these boxes too. So if we as I turn off my music on the other screen. That Fred again, this shit's loud. That shit is loud. So if we already have this person's first name, basically saying that if we have already asked for their first name in a DM previously and they've already given it to us, then we're not going to ask for them for that information again. That's what this condition is doing right here. So first name has any value? If yes, check if we have their email. If no, get their first name. Same thing with email. Check if we have their email. If yes, check if we have their phone number. If we don't have their email, ask for their email. And then finally with phone number, same thing. So I would argue that I would actually add this data to kits, and I'll kind of explain what these actions are in a second. But once we have their email, if this person doesn't give us their phone number, we still want to add them to that sequence to make sure we can send them emails. So that's why I just added this here. So once we have this information, I don't know why I just spit everywhere. That's insane. I never do that. But once we have this information, we're going to kick that over to Kit, which is what we're going to use for our email service provider. That's what I use. That's what Emily uses. And hopefully that's what you use too, because I think it's the best in the game right now when it comes to liquid code, which we will go through in a little bit. So we're adding this person to Kit. So if you don't have Kit, obviously, you can just go to kit.com and sign up. But if you don't have Kit connected to ManyChat, all you need to do is grab your API secret key and connect it to ManyChat. And that allows you to now not have to bypass or not have to go through Zapier. You can bypass Zapier or Make, and then you can start adding this information to your Kit email. So that's all it is. I would add this person directly to the sequence. I would not add them to a form. You'll notice that there's also an option to add them to a form. You can get their data. You can add a tag. I'm usually using one of these top two right here. And let's just say, for this case in particular, she has an email sequence that leads up to the workshop. And then she also has an email sequence that goes out to these people after the workshop. So the sequence that we would theoretically be adding this person to is the workshop sequence, like pre-workshop sequence. Why did I just reverse those words? I don't know. But we're making sure that we're using the data, sending it over to Kit, and then using that to get people to attend the webinar. So you could do a few things here. Right now, this would, in theory, we would have to export this list every day or so, and then manually upload these people to the webinar in Webinar Jam. You could also just send them to the registration link because unfortunately, Webinar Jam does not have a really simple way for us to collect information from somewhere else and then automatically add that person to Webinar Jam for that specific webinar. But you can just send them to the Webinar Jam link and then still follow up with this question right here. So, you have two options. This is option number one, and then export this data daily and then send it over to Webinar Jam to make sure people actually get the link. Uh, you could just also just bypass Webinar Jam and that registration link if you wanted to. But what we also want to do is send this follow-up question, right? Because it's going back to the canvas that we made previously. Pull it up right here. See how quickly I can do this. Canvas. M on the brain. Perfect. Cool. So we're taking the data from Manychat, sending it over to Kit, and then we're using this question right here. So basically, like when it comes to manifestation, what do you feel like is your biggest gap right now, or what is it exactly that you're trying to achieve? I like one of those two variations of that question. And you want to make people think long term. Like, what is it that I need help with the most? Because when you're thinking about a $3,000 product, it's not like, it's not like you finish this in 2 days, right? This is a long-term solution to that problem with the course and the community. So the question that we're going to ask here is this. So when it comes to reprogramming your brain, what's the biggest area of your life that you would like to transform? So what we're using here is actually a data collection message. So data collection allows you to do a few things. You can collect things like email, you can collect phone number, last name, you can collect links, you can collect images, you can collect dates like what's your birthday, so on and so forth. We are using a free text input here. So we're asking this question. If I click into context, reply as text, reply type as text, but now we're saving this message that they send as an input. This is important because the next step is for us to then analyze their response to this question and group them into one of 5 categories. We are not doing that. AI is doing that. So I'll show you why that's important. So all you have to do to create this user field is just type, first of all, make sure that save response to a custom field is checked on, and then you can create the custom field here. I would create 2 of them. Make one for inputs and make one for output, and make sure that the response here is mapped to inputs. Cool. So next step is we use a chat GPT action. If you don't have this available to you, it means you have to go into the OpenAI developer platform and then create an API key for Manychat and then just copy and paste that into the integration with ChatGPT. By the way, what I'm going to do, so to use this template and to use these integrations, you do need a Manychat Pro account. I will link a free 30-day trial of that below in the description. How's that sound? Sound good? Cool. So I mentioned using the input, right? So this was mapped to the inputs, M on the brain inputs. Now we have this little like bracket and parentheses, like period sort of thing right here. This allows you to add personalization to this. And this is the input prompt for ChatGPT. So the way that I like to use it is we can say something like, we just asked this person this question, like what areas of their life they would like to transform by reprogramming their subconscious brain. And they said inputs. What I want you to do is take their response and map it into one of 5 categories the best you can. So those 5 categories are confidence, stress, career, discipline, and relationships. And I want your output to be one of those 5, no more, no less. And if you can't group this person into one of those 5 buckets, do nothing. Cool. So latest user message, we always want to map this to last text input, especially if we're just doing this prompt based off of their most previous message. But now we have this save results to chat GPT response. And then the response is mapped to the output here. So we use the inputs and now we have the output. Super important. Because now what we're going to do is say, thank you for sharing that, number 1. But now, once we have this information, we're going to re-update this person in Kit with that new field. So next is we add this person to a form and you're going to have this like ghost form. The ghost form is what you're able to use if you just want to keep updating somebody's preferences and custom fields within Manychat, Kit. And no matter how many times you add them to this form, all it's doing is just updating that person because we already have their email. It's just going to keep adding more information over and over again. But you'll see in Kit, I actually have a custom field for this. So I have M on the brain segment. And then I'm mapping that output from ChatGPT to that custom field in Kit. So it sounds crazy, but let's see what this looks like because I've tested this before. So I've already had, this is just my burner account, Gannon's pictures. Listen, if you want to go look at all the pictures, I'd say, cool, do whatever you want to do. I'm not saying you gotta, but it'd be cool. Show some love. So I've gone through automation before on that account. So I already have first name mapped. I have email mapped, but now like I never ran an automation that collected phone number. So what I did was I tested the automation. So when you tested automation in Manychat through an account, it gives you a random 3-digit number to send to that account to test it, and it fires the automation. So you'll notice, right, because I already had first name and email on that account, it says, great, one last thing, what's your best phone number? So if I go back to the conversation, enter a random phone number. By the way, it's not mine. Don't call that phone number. Not my number. That says, perfect. I'll send you the link to the webinar in a few minutes. So we send them the link to join the webinar through the sequence in Kit. In the meantime, when it comes to reprogramming your brain, what's the biggest area of your life you would like to transform? And I said, I have a lot of imposter syndrome and confidence problems, even though I know a lot of stuff and that stuff works. Can I speak? Maybe I have a speech problem is what I really need help with. I have a lot of imposter syndrome and confidence problems, even though I know a lot of stuff and the stuff works. So I would love to get clarity on that. And then we go back here. Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. I've got this noted. I'll make sure to send you yada, yada, yada. And then it says the same thing here. Thanks for sharing that. I've got this noted. I'll make sure to send you the best resources. Cool. Now what happens after this? Well, we add that person to Kit. So if I go into Kit, you'll notice that once it's tested and once it's set up, that the segment is now confidence. email here, confidence segment here. So let's go back to my response, right? I have a lot of imposter syndrome and confidence problems. So ChatGPT recognizes that as a confidence thing and it groups them into the confidence bucket. Now that information is sent over to Kit, which we see right here in confidence. Cool. We're done. All right. Bye, everybody. See ya. Just kidding. We have one more step because when we collect this information, we actually need to do something with it. Right? Like just storing information for the sake of storing information does absolutely nothing for you. You need to use it. So here's the easiest way to use this in Kit. So we have the M on the brain segment right here. It says confidence. If I go into this sequence right here, so I'm just going to type in like M on the brain sequence. Yes, just so I know. You see a lot of weird stuff here. So you see parentheses, you see brackets, you see percentage points, you see equal sign. What is this actually doing? Well, this is called liquid code, liquid syntax in Kit. And this allows you to display messages based off of certain conditions of profiles and subscribers in Kit. So you can send the same email 5 different ways. Here's what I mean. So if I preview this right now, it's going to say no data shared based off of this entire thing, right? So it says percentage if subscriber M on the brain segment equals confidence, show this message. If it's stress, show this message. If it's career, show this message. If it's discipline, show this message, so on and so forth, right? If we don't have any data, which is basically else, if we don't have any of this, it's going to say no data shared. And then we close this with end if. So you're watching this and you're like, holy shit, I need to do this. Screenshot it. That's all you gotta do. Screenshot it. And this works with segments and like if subscriber tag equals this, you can do a few different things. But this is for custom fields. So if subscriber dot M on the brain segment, right? M on the brain underscore segment right here. Is that show this message? So if I preview this, it's gonna say no data shared. You're like, what the fuck? Well, you said it was confidence. Why is it saying no data? Well, I need to preview this as a subscriber. If I go to the email address associated with that account, right? It is Gannon at runwithit.com. Click on that. It says you have confidence problems. So basically, everything after that, I think you'd be a great fit to check out. And I'm not a copywriter, as you can see. Like this is not really the best way to promote a $3,000 course. I think you'd be a great fit to check out Minecraft. It's a great course and community. And then, maybe you say like based on what you told me, you could be a great fit for Minecraft, right? So like let's preview this. If we can go back. So you can do it that way, right? So you have confidence problems. Based on that, like you're a good fit. Like, come on, throw some money at me or something. But yeah, it's basically that. So like you can have different messages within these two things. Like you can customize this message completely. You can customize this message completely. But let's just say like, the segment updates to stress. And I hit save. And then let's see if it updates here. Probably has to update. Let's test that one more time. Preview. Confidence problem. Did it update? Maybe it didn't update. Oh, it didn't update. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it would say stress. And just to prove it to you. Just to prove it to you. Because you probably think I'm bullshitting. You have stress problems. See? Done. Cool. So that's the power of this. It's actually collecting data just based off of messages that people send you on Instagram and just mapping it to custom fields that you can now utilize in your email provider. It's one of the most powerful marketing tools on the internet. And again, going back to this canvas with all this crazy writing all over the place, I'm like fairly confident that we can easily bring up a conversion rate from 1 to 2% to like 3 to 4 to 5%, obviously depending on like the audience and depending on the cost of the product. But this is literally what me and my team do all day. And yeah, so two things. If you enjoy video breakdowns like this, number one, subscribe. I would love to do more breakdowns like this for different creators and brands in the future. And I send out a weekly newsletter, by the way, that I will break down different, like just like smaller bits and pieces of what I've broken down in this video. So you can subscribe to that below. And number two, there's an application to apply to work with me in my team. So if you see that, if you're over 100,000 followers on Instagram, you're doing at least 20K per month, we would probably be a good fit to work together. So fill out that application. If you're a good fit, it'll prompt you to book a call with me personally. Love to see you. And if you enjoyed this video, again, subscribe, and I will catch you in a future video.
Peace.